Speaking of reliability, a podcast with good friends talking with you about reliability engineering topics. Welcome to Speaking of Reliability. This is Fred Schenkelberg.
And this is Carl Carlson.
Hey, Carl. You know, we've talked about the certifications in the past, and more from is it useful for your job or for your next job and that kind of thing. And I don't remember what episode it was. I'll have to take a look, but I know we've written about it and talked about it. But I got a question from Mark, who's asking a question on behalf of a friend of theirs that said, I'm interested in working in England or Australia or New Zealand. I apparently overseas English, and I won't say English-ish. Diane and I are watching Australian Survivor, and we can barely understand the accent. But we know it's English somewhere in there, so they don't put subtitles. But anyway, so the question is for a friend of Mark's that said, you know, I'm looking at going overseas, and the ASQ certification surveys, the salary surveys, seem to show that if you have a certification, you tend to make more money than people without certifications in the same types of jobs or positions or whatever. And that always raises my hackles a little bit, knowing more about what's behind it. But the question was, you know, are the ASQ certifications relevant or known or sought after in overseas markets in these other locations? And I'm like, you know, the salary survey doesn't break it down. It's generally U.S. and Canada, maybe some Mexico, but it doesn't really have enough input from overseas. And I don't know if they don't survey out far enough or there just aren't that many. But I know Korea, when I was part of ASQ and I would see the monthly or the results of these tests, Korea had a lot of people getting certified. So I know it exists overseas. But other than that, that was the question, is that a value? And the other part of the question is, would I still command a higher salary if I have the certification in these overseas markets? I think that was the gist of the question. So I think there's 2 or 3 different elements in this one we could address.
Yeah, very interesting. And my initial thoughts of we should start talking in general and then get specific to the international topic, but in general about certifications. And just as a side point, on a trip to China within the last few years, the fact that I was a certified reliability engineer was highly respected. In other words, it had some degree of traction. But I want to say this at the outset, and there's a lot of things come to mind. First, I would ask somebody, what's your objective for getting certified? If the objective is to get a status symbol that you think commands more money, I think that's the wrong objective.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to know why, what's the reason for getting certification? Because I would think that the more money you command, it comes down to you have to ask about correlation versus causation, because maybe it correlates, but it correlates because the person who gets certified may be more motivated, seeking knowledge. You know, there's a whole set of things, and not just because of the symbol. And so I just had some thoughts that off the top of my head there, but I really come back to the objective. Why do you want to be certified? I got certified back in 1994, I think it was, or 93, on ASQ CRE. And the objective was to improve my understanding of the fundamentals and basically show that I've been able to do that. And that has stayed with me. But if my objective was to get a symbol next to my name that I could flash around to maybe get a higher salary, I would say I'm pursuing this for the wrong reason.
And that is the gist of what I often answer these questions by, is it's the certification itself is it's not like a license, like a state license that allows you to sign off on a design of a bridge, for example, as a mechanical engineer or those kinds of licensing things where you have a legal liability to it. Certifications don't have any of that associated with it. They are a marker of a milestone. They're money makers for the people that offer the certifications, for all the fees that are involved with it. But the interviewers that is talking to somebody could say very, very quickly, and you know this, you've talked to people that they walk in and say, well, I'm CRE certified and blah, 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 and I know this stuff. And you ask them 2 questions and they can't tell you the difference between HALT and ALT. And like, well, maybe not here.
Yeah.
I think your performance, your ability to translate this body of knowledge into value is the key part of it. Now, there's another piece to this, though, is so many of the job applicant process is looking for accolades or, keywords or, various things of whatever they're using for their artificial intelligence to read these things. And having the CRE in some algorithms, not all, some algorithms say, oh, okay, tick that box, that puts them up 3 points. So it may get you in the door. But if it's there only to show and there's no substance behind it, you're not going any further, in my mind.
Yeah. On the positive side, and I want to be candid about this, I think certification can be part of a good career plan.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, and here really is, here's the topic that if I was mentoring someone, I try to do that as often as possible with people, is in terms of coaching, is what's your long-term career plans? Where do you want to be in 10 years, 15 years if you're younger?
Mm-hmm.
And part of that involves education. It involves not just university education, but training in certain tools and methods, and certification can be part of that. Internships, if you're younger, can be a huge part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, to me, it's kind of like our reliability plan discussion that we've had in our book.
Mm-hmm.
is you want to have a strategic vision. You want to have a gap analysis. Where are you today compared to where you want to be? And then you want to have a plan to get there. And certification of certain subjects can be part of the plan. So that's really the discussion is, are you getting certified as part of an overall plan? Or are you just trying to throw some acronyms next to your name in the hopes that something will stick in terms of a higher salary?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a whole pile of stuff, and I know that we've talked about it in the past. So I'll see if I can find that article and we can link to it, or those comments. But the overseas part, I think it really varies by, country to country, but also company to company and hiring team to hiring team. I remember when I worked at Raychem, there was a noticeable number of people that were MIT graduates. And I asked my boss about it one time, and he says, oh, yeah, the founder was from MIT, so he always sends recruiters there.
Yeah, right.
And it's not nepotism per se. It's not family members, but if it's the same campus and the founder, knows that campus, knows the people, had a great education there, started a successful company. The initial hires were, comrades from the same university program. They were looking deliberately for people from MIT. And there are people, I've seen it more in the medical devices industry, is they're looking for people with CQE or CRE certifications. And if you don't have it, then you got to get it, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes a checkbox on the expectations of that. Now, when I talk to people hiring folks in these medical device systems, why are you, looking to get everybody certified? Well, we think it looks good to our auditors.
Oh, like ISO 9000.
Yeah. And I'm training them. I had a whole crew of people that wanted to get certified. And it says, well, how do you use this information? How do you do SPC, which was a big segment we're talking about? Oh, no, we don't do that because our products are perfect, kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, why do you want to learn this stuff? They did very little things other than prepare paperwork for audits. And I like, auditing is not the end game here, guys, for quality engineers. That's not what you're here for.
Let's highlight something for listeners. And I think I'm sure the listeners will agree, but I'd love to hear stories about this from people. There's everything you do should have a reason for doing it. And we say this in our book on reliability management. Every method you select should have a reason. We should ask why. Mm-hmm. And so you're not just doing an FMEA automatically. You say, why are we doing the FMEA? But the mistake is where companies say, let's do FMEAs are great. I've seen wonderful things. Let's just require them everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's the same mistake with a CRE. CREs are great in the people I've seen, so we'll just now require them everywhere.
Right.
College education is great. Let's just require everybody has a college education. Doesn't matter what courses they take.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's got to be, to me, the value of the CRE is that it made me think about and learn about parts of the body of knowledge I had no experience with. And it reinforced the areas I knew about, right? I learned about hypothesis tests and I was good with, comparisons, but I didn't really understand design of experiments. And going, okay, well, that really expands this capability. Let me dive more into that and then go try it, go use it.
What year did you get certified?
Oh, geez, I don't know. It was early 90s. It was early 90s.
Okay, same with me. So the reason I ask is because when I took it, the then body of knowledge was more tilted towards statistics.
Yeah.
And I know that over the years, ASQ has been able to balance better with Design 4.
Some. I have my opinions on that.
Yes.
Well, I was going through a master's program for statistics, and I both the CQE and the CRE both had a lot of math in it. So I like, oh, well, I'll just take that now,
Yeah.
And I was already learning about where I was working. I mean, I basically had a master's degree in in-house training. It was every quarter we were taking courses and doing stuff. And my boss at the time was like, do an experiment every day and write it up, So we were doing hypothesis tests and control charts and DOEs and on and on and on and on and on and measurement system analysis. It was every single day that we had to do something. Now, some were, well planned and pretty expensive experiments, and we went through the rigor on those. But other times we were just, trying to create a regression analysis of different people's walking speeds and their heights. We were just doing whatever.
Just get something done.
Just get something to check off on the list.
It's 5:00 and you want
to get my experiment done. But it was, and he was okay with that. Ron was that we want to ingrain the ability to do regression analysis and data analysis and plotting and graphics and understanding data and collecting data and measuring systems and all these tools that we're learning about. He says you need to use them to know them. And I think that is also part of the certification thing, is that if you run through the prep and you pass the test and then never touch it again, well, you kind of miss the point, in my opinion. You just missed the idea here. Now, overseas, and the idea of it, of value or not of value, is really local to that person in that company and that thing. And I think it's for the same reasons that it's that way here in the States. I've seen companies that if you have a CRE on your name, you'll get a couple of clear questions that they're probing your ability to use the information in the body of knowledge. And if that doesn't come through, that you're out. But the same set of questions for somebody without a CRE. Have you done FMEAs? So how do you use them? When would you use them? Are great questions to ask for your knowledge on that particular tool or any of these tools. So overseas, the question that irked me a little bit was, if I have a CRE or if I have a certification, would I command a higher salary overseas? No, it's kind of, one, we don't have survey data that supports it one way or the other. And there are plenty of questions about the surveys, given especially CRE, was very few people actually contribute to those surveys. So it's a very small sample size versus the population. But the people I have known that have commanded great salaries and have CREs, they don't need a CRE to get a great salary. They're just people that get stuff done.
That comes back to that first point is do it for the right objective.
Yeah.
I had a comment to make about preparation, and it's just sort of a side comment to anybody that's considering certification. Be ready to do some serious study. It's not unless the test has changed in the last few years. It can be daunting to people who are not prepared.
Yeah, and it part of it is just because it's both the CRE, CQE cover a very broad range in the body of knowledge of topics, and it goes everything from understanding terminology. I still remember the CQE test was one of the questions was like, I have no idea what they're talking about, and it was on metal hardness, and it listed 4 different scales. Then I don't know, the Manning scale of hardness, the Reinhardt scale of hardness, it just had named scales of hardness. I'm like, which one of these is not a real scale of hardness?
Oh my goodness.
I have no idea.
That's a bit,
it's not terribly useful. Yeah.
Right.
Or useful or knowledge, needed, but part of it was you needed to know different measurement systems and measurement techniques. And so it was in that realm. And luckily, I had Duran's book that listed a couple of them. And so I guessed I had a 50-50 shot. And I don't know if I guessed right or not. But the body of knowledge covers a wide range of things in definitions and applications and comparisons. And how do you apply these things are all part of how it gets evaluated. And I know from teaching stats or prep courses over the years is that the statistics part trips up so many people and gives them fits for it.
Yeah. Well, when I did it in 93, I guess it is, there was a 40% pass rate. So it was a pretty extensive effort. Fortunately, I dove into it and took a class specifically on the ASQ certification body of knowledge, and I was able to pass it. But a lot of people don't know. It may have changed since then. I want to point out that the ASQ website has good information. So if you're considering certification, they have a brochure on the CRE body of knowledge, and then the fact sheets that give you more information. So it's worth
pursuing it and seeing it out. Yeah. Well, then I'm going to plug my own article series. I
was going to say,
CRE preparation, which has got close to 500 short tutorial articles, basically covering, just about all of the body of knowledge. The last 3 different body of knowledges are pretty much covered. And so I need to update the organization of it, make it easier to find stuff. But there's tons of short tutorials, and I've gotten messages over the years, people saying they use that as their study guide. The unfortunate part, and what I should do probably is put it in a book form, is that you can't take the website into the test facility with you.
Right.
You can take binders or books or written material, published material.
You have to print it out.
Well, I don't know I don't know if that would be recognized as a resource or that'd be scratch paper. And a lot of them have examples, but they don't have sample exam format ones. So some of the articles do. There's all kinds of arcane rules about how you can use outside knowledge, but that's a subject for a whole nother day.
I want to build off of something you said earlier, Fred. First of all, I'm a certified recruiter back in my GM days. And so I have some experience on this. And we did a lot of recruiting at universities, and not just at universities, recruiting of other people. And personally, my eyes would roll if I see somebody's name with about 5 or 6 certifications next to it.
Yeah.
And that's just something to avoid, in my opinion. And if you are certified that often, I wouldn't even list them all next to your name.
No.
It's kind of a turnoff.
Well, it is. It's to me, and I don't know if there's somewhere that there's like an etiquette for what you should put behind or before your name. If you're a medical doctor, doing Dr. So-and-so makes sense. If you're a PhD, technically you're a doctorate, but that has a different connotation to me. Now, no offense to all my academic friends out there that get called Dr. So-and-so all the time, but it's a different thing. If you put it after your name, PhD in something, I think that's appropriate. But the professional society or internal business certifications, I know Rams, I don't know if they're still doing it, they had a certification program, right? And part of the tutorials, well, you would know, you were just there.
They are doing it.
Yeah. And the overt reason in the committee, when I was there when it got created, was to encourage people to come back again. We're going to do, you get signed up for, you pay a fee, and now you're on the hook to attend these tutorials in a 2-year span. And so you're basically hooking people, and they have evidence that it works. The number of people that show up for the first time went down a few years after they started this program, and more people came back for a second round. So it was a way to boost attendance. It made a little bit of money. It encouraged people to attend the tutorials. It had a lot of objectives, not to give you a credential to put on the back of your name. It was a marketing thing. And ASQ and other professional societies often lose sight of the role of the motivation to help people do professional development, but they are great at collecting the fees. And, the CRE, they had one class on reliability stuff, and it was god awful. And so that they require you to do all these things, but they offered nothing to help you do it. And I was like, this isn't right. You're just collecting fees.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's good reason. I think there are reasons to be certified. And internationally, I agree with you that it's going to depend on the company or the organization, whether they value that. And there's a culture, and you've written about this, and of course, Adam has a book on it, Reliability Culture. There's a culture in every company, and that culture is different. It's not necessarily the culture of the country.
Right.
I'll give an example, and I won't mention names here of the company, but a tech company. We are working on a project with a colleague, and one of the people put doctor in front of their name, and their feedback was, that's not really that respected here.
Right.
What's respected is what you do, not your status. And I thought that was an interesting cultural perspective. So it's really important to know the culture of the company you're in. And of course, there's a lot of international companies. So if you're located overseas, you'd have to understand that culture to see what the value is. But there's always good value on having a career plan, and a certification can be part of that. So irrespective of because people move from company to company from time to time.
So more so these days.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't put it all just in what one company's feedback is.
Yeah. Well said. And so I want to shout out to Mark. Thanks for forwarding the question. Hopefully, and I had sent a pretty similar response to him to pass along to his friend about this thing, and a couple of articles that we've written about it. But it was an example of somebody sending over a question. Actually, we got like 3 really good questions. We'll have to get to a couple of them over the next couple of weeks. But thanks, Mark. And if you're have a question for yourself or for a friend or somebody you know, or just curious about something, you too can ask us a question, join the conversation. Head over to accendoreliability.com/go/SOR. There's a widget to leave a voice message, and there's also a comment field there. This message from Mark came through the About page. He contacted us through a contact form on my About page. We've also received questions through our LinkedIn accounts, and Carl and I and the other hosts of the show are all active on LinkedIn. We have our About pages, and you could just send us a direct message, however you want to get in touch. We certainly look for those and encourage good questions, and hope that we can answer them, give you a bit of advice, and sometimes they're head scratchers, which I like also. So send them along. So with that, I think we'll wrap this one up, Carl.
Sounds good. Fred, thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to Speaking of Reliability. We invite you to join the conversation. If you have a question or a topic that you think we should discuss in a future show, please let us know. You can find a comment box below the episode show notes, or just leave a note as part of a review on iTunes.